very hard to get our stream working, and I think it's proving to be a success. We've got lots of people joining us from all over the world, I think, which is great news. And so on to our second presenter, and it's my privilege and pleasure to introduce Paul Braddock, who for many years has been a colleague of mine in Barcelona at the British Council, and he's now web manager of the Teaching English website, the British Council's website for teachers. Over to you, Paul.
Hello. You hear me all right? Great. Okay, thanks for coming. As Graham said, I work for the British Council as a Teaching English website manager. But today I'm going to talk about flipped classroom. We're going to look at flipped classrooms. Not here. Is that better? Good. Okay. It's going to be a fairly interactive session, so if you're kind of feeling a little bit sleepy, I'm sorry, but you're going to be asked to do various tasks and things throughout the session. I've even got handouts on paper, which is strange for a Learning Technology SIG event, I realise, but there will be paper handouts that you'll be using throughout the session. Okay. Your first task is really to answer that question. So, if I can ask you, just with people around you, what do you understand by the flipped classroom? What is the flipped classroom? I'll just give you a couple of minutes, if that's okay, just with a few people around you to talk about that question, and then we'll come back and look at what you said. Does anyone want to shout out a few answers they've been talking about? What have you been talking about?
Online,
yes.
Online is flipped. Does it mean students guide the process? Students guide the process.
Students guide the process. Okay. I'm not going to kind of say yes or no, because you'll see why a little bit later through the session. Why I'm not going to say yes it is or no it isn't. Okay. Yeah.
So what would normally be input happens at home, and what would normally be homework happens in the class.
Okay. Okay.
Can you repeat?
Okay, yeah, so the gentleman there said input that normally happens in the classroom happens at home, and the homework happens in class. That's roughly what you said, yeah? Okay. Yes. The input's mainly through video. Okay. Anything else? Yes. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So the use of the teacher's time is through mediation within the classroom. It was kind of mostly what I got. Okay. All right. I said that was your first task. I've actually kind of given you another task, which is your real first task. That was just a warm-up. And a little bit in the same way as Hugh did with this session, we're going to do it in a very EFL way, in the way that you might in a classroom. And while we're doing this task, what I'd like you to think about is time, and also this. Does anyone know do you know what this is? Yes. What is it? Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, thank you. Okay. So the task that you're doing, including the task that you've just done, and the task that you're about to do, think about it in terms of time that takes you to do it, and also in terms of Bloom's taxonomy with critical thinking skills. Which of the critical thinking skills are you using, or have you been using so far, and will you be using with this task? Okay. Obviously, you haven't seen the task yet, so you can't answer it. But I've got these handouts that I'd like you to work from in true non-technology TEFL fashion. I've only got 30 because I had to pay to get them printed and photocopied. I'll get the money back off you later, Graham. So you might have to share kind of one between 3 or one between 4. There's a reading task. Just look at the first page. There's a reading, and then there's 2 tasks below. So if you could just read the text when you get it, and answer the 2 questions at the bottom with your group. Okay, if I can stop you, whether you've finished or whether you haven't. Did anyone not finish reading? A few people. Put your hand up if you didn't finish reading the text. Okay. Okay. Put your hand up if you finished reading the text but didn't manage to answer both questions at the bottom or discuss. Okay. And put your hand up if you managed to do the first question, answer the first question. Okay. A few of you. Okay. Thinking about time. What does that tell you? I gave you a time limit. Yeah. Fairly restrictive time limit. And it's quite clear to see from the hands up around the room that some of you finished it, some of you didn't. Okay. In an EFL classroom, where are we? We're about 10-15 minutes into the session. Given time for you to kind of finish your coffee and settle down. So in an EFL setting, that would be time for the students to kind of mingle in and finish talking about what they've done at the weekend, or finish chatting, etc., etc. So we're looking at probably about 15 minutes of, if it's an EFL lesson, probably about a 90-minute class has been spent doing that, possibly longer, and you still haven't all finished it. What should I do as a teacher in an EFL classroom? What should I do? Give you more time? Some say no, some say yes. Hands up if you think I should give you more time. Hands up if you think tough. Okay, we're going with the tough, I'm afraid. Sorry. Okay, but on a serious note, it's roughly kind of almost 50-50. In terms of those of you who'd finished reading and those of you who haven't finished reading and finished the tasks. So, in terms of that, in terms of a flipped classroom, that would have happened. You would have done that at home. Okay, the input would have happened at home. Not in that way, I hasten to add. I'll show you in a moment how it would have happened at home. But can you just think about and go back into your groups if you want to finish those 2 tasks? You can. Thinking about that task I gave you, and thinking about that in a classroom setting, and thinking about that in a flipped setting where you would have done that from home. What are the implications there, and what are the kind of the positives, if you like, of doing it in a flipped way? Okay, I'm just going to give you a minute. If you could just go back into your groups and spend a minute or so. Okay, there's your minute. Again, restricting you in terms of the time. Does anyone want to comment on what they've just been talking about? It doesn't matter if you don't. Okay. Okay. Did you hear that? So doing that task at home, it takes out your inhibitions. So you wouldn't. I mean, I asked you to put your hand up if you haven't finished reading the text. In a classroom setting, possibly with teenagers, probably no one would have put their hand up, or they'd have looked round to see if someone else was going to put their hand up first, and generally kind of not admitted to not having finished the task. Which in one isolated activity, okay, fair enough. But over the course of an academic year, you're going to find that the students are going to get further and further behind and not admit it. Yeah.
Here reflecting on our own education as humanities students, where a lot of are doing in literature is split classroom. We go away, read the book, and talk back in the class. But the important life skill we first acquired was learning how to bullshit when we haven't had work. So that's for you to wonder.
Okay. Did you get that?
Sorry, I'll repeat myself. If you're studying literature, you do a flipped classroom. You can't read a book in the class. You read that in your own time. and the lecturers expect you to have read the book and come to class and discuss it. But if you're a self-respecting student, often you have other things to do and you don't read the book. So the important skill that I developed as a student, and Gregory hears too, was to learn how to talk in the class as if you had read the book. And just to call the lecturer that you had. And I think, that unfortunately is the risk of flipped classroom as well.
Okay.
Yeah. I did it in French as well.
I think, and I think that touches upon one of the big issues, which is what happens if not everybody has done it, and we'll hopefully kind of come to that nearer the end. I don't have any definitive answers, unfortunately. So if you've come for a definitive answer, I don't have that one answer that you're looking for, but suggestions. But no, I mean it's a good point. Interesting paraphrasing as well. Okay. What you can see is a video, and I think the gentleman near the back talked about the flipped classroom in terms of using video. It's very prevalent in flipped classroom learning. This is a video of what you've just read, and we'll just listen to a little.
In order to really understand what a flipped class is, you have to first define what a normal class is. In a traditional class, you would sit in your desk for 20 to 30 minutes listening to your teacher give a lecture over a chapter of a novel. As you are listening to the lecture, you would be sitting at your desk, copying the notes from the board or PowerPoint as fast as you can. Your mind begins to wander. You have to go to the bathroom, or someone is annoyingly tapping their pencil on their desk. Your hand is cramping, and there are so many distractions. On top of that, you have absolutely no time to process what you are being taught. Once the lecture is over,
this was created by the teacher using a tool called Powtoon. Has anyone heard of Powtoon? There's lots of tools like this. Powtoon is the one that this teacher used to create this video for her students. I'm not suggesting that we will go away and spend masses and masses of time creating videos, but using something like this is fairly simple and can be done fairly easily.
you are given a worksheet.
No, don't know. So, what would be more appealing? Being asked at home to watch a video of the text that you've just read, and then the two tasks, or coming into class and having to sit through a reading comprehension. Hands up for video at home. Okay. Hands up for reading comprehension in class. Okay. This is, the reading comprehension is simply the transcript of the video, which I would suggest, if it's a fairly short video, having, because I think why video obviously is current. Students like to watch video more so than reading. It feels like it's less effort, perhaps. It suits visual learners, but then also having the transcript for those students to read through as well is also, I think, quite an important feature to have. Can I answer your question? Yeah. Okay. And then the tasks. The question is, how do you do this, and how do you communicate this, and how do you get the students to do it? How do you set up the activity? What tools do you use so that the students have access to this information? And how do you know that they have done the task? Okay. Does anyone? Well, okay. I'll show you what I use, and then we can kind of come back to ways that you think work as well. Okay. In answer to your question, which we didn't give, and I asked you what is the flipped classroom, and asked you to discuss it, that's an answer from a guy called Aaron Sams, who was one of the, I suppose, front runners or designers, if you like, of the flipped classroom model. There's no such thing as the flipped classroom. What does he mean by that? Basically, yeah, there's not one approach. I mean, there's. I'll show you in the next slide a kind of an initial quote, if you like, about what the flipped classroom is. But I think as teachers and as teachers who attend conferences and as teachers who are interested in our own professional development, what we do is we take an idea or a methodology or a course book or material, and we adapt it and we change it to suit both our ways of working, if you like, and also the ways that our students work, and that's something which is it's kind of a constantly and continually evolving process. If we call ourselves teachers who are interested in our professional development, then that's what we do. We reflect on what we do in the classroom and what we do as teachers, and we reflect based on feedback from students and how the students respond to what we do, and we adapt and we change the way that we work accordingly. And I don't think anyone would dispute that might be a very lengthy definition of a teacher interested in CPD and professional development. This, if you do want to dispute it, that's fine. I think that's fairly. I think that's okay. This is an early kind of definition of the flipped classroom, which reflects, I think, a little bit of some of the things that you said when we looked at the first slide and I asked you what is the flipped classroom. So the flipped classroom inverts traditional teaching methods. What's the next bit? Okay. Did you hear that? It kind of gives a very negative. It has a very negative connotation to how we teach. I think is sort of summarising what you said, and the fact that we all, to some extent, flip the way we teach and flip our classrooms. Okay. The thing that I don't like about it is it adheres to a very kind of behaviourist view of teaching, as in the teacher is the person in charge and the giver of knowledge, and the students are these kind of vessels that accept the knowledge from the teacher. And I think the traditional kind of that traditional notion, that traditional idea of instruction, and that word in itself, instruction, it has connotations of a very kind of behaviourist view of teaching, which I think probably most of us in this room. I think probably necessity sometimes says that we have to teach that way if we have very, very large classes, and perhaps that's the case. But on the whole, I would say that the way that we teach adheres more to a more constructivist approach, or even a more connectivist approach, and certainly with online learning and with student-generated content, that idea of instruction being given by the teacher is quite a negative. It's quite a negative quote. Okay. This is a sort of a slightly different version, which I kind of came up with in response to that a little bit, I guess. And it's almost the same, but there are some things that are different. It takes the word traditional away, takes the word instruction out, and puts input with initial before it there, and output is there instead of homework. Okay. Can you just with your groups think about the initial quote with traditional classrooms, instruction, and homework, and that quote, and just see how that differs, or just talk about how that's different. The connotation is different. Okay. Again, just a couple of minutes. Okay. We can stop there. Sorry, I realise we're kind of. We're kind of against the clock a little bit, so I'll just kind of give you what I think are the differences. I think with obviously taking out traditional sort of places the flipped classroom in a more current context. Initial input, and I think initial is quite important. If you look at instruction, it suggests that's everything. Everything that the students need to know is there in the instruction that the teacher gives. There's no encouragement, there's no suggestion really that the students might find information elsewhere, and take a little bit of responsibility for their own learning, becoming more autonomous. So the idea with initial input is that what you're doing as a teacher is providing them with, in a way, stimulus outside of the classroom, in an attempt, I suppose, to provoke them into searching for more information elsewhere, and not just seeing you as the sage, if you like, who knows everything. So you provide them with some initial stimulus that encourages them or forces them to go elsewhere and look for extra information. In terms of the output, I think homework, the word homework in the quote that uses the word traditional, homework has a very traditional connotation of gap fills from a workbook, or something very paper-based, and really just something that accesses the sort of the lower level critical thinking skills, remembering, understanding, without really taking it to a higher level and analysing or creating, if you like. So in this sense, output is far more about accessing the higher level skills, analysing, evaluating, and actually creating content, if you like. Okay. Can you see that? Okay, yeah. That's quite a nice. I took that from an infographic which was on the handout that you were going to get, but it would have meant paying an extra 20 quid, I think, for the for the handouts. So I'll put it on SlideShare and share it with you afterwards. So the idea with the classroom flip, okay, so it uses educational technology. It provides opportunity for learning through activity. It kind of encourages students, really, because they're using technology to do this. It encourages them to develop their 21st century skills, or their digital literacies, which I won't go into now, but I suggest buying Nikki's book, which will tell you, both in the input phase and also in the output phase. And they're tools that the students will be learning, that will be using at home. Certainly searches for information, becoming more discerning in their searches for information, and using these tools to create content in the classroom as well. Okay, learning through activity, obviously, I think learning by doing, most people would agree actually, learning by doing is, it allows you as the learner to take control and responsibility for your learning. So in a sense, you own your own learning far more by actually doing something rather than by reading something that you've been given, or carrying out instructions. So what kind of happens in the classroom is very much more guided by you as the learner. And obviously then that affects and influences the learning environment. And I think an interesting thing that Hugh said at the beginning of his talk was, it's nice to be here, and where is here? And essentially, I think flipping the classroom and doing these kinds of things, these activities, takes the learning environment and it moves it into more online, but also it combines it with a physical presence as well. So blended learning essentially, but the learning environment is wherever, or should be where the students learn, and where they take their learning. Okay. But what I'd like to do is go through an activity that I've used to hopefully to kind of highlight some of the concepts, if you like, or aspects of flipped learning. Okay. So there's a process that begins in the classroom, moves outside of the classroom, then comes back into the classroom. And what we'll see, hopefully, is a process of that and how I've done that. Okay. These are 8 people, and they're all in a short film that you're going to watch in about 5 minutes. What's the connection between these 8 people? Okay, again, in your groups, a couple of minutes. What's the connection between these people? Apart from the fact they're all in the same video. Okay, before we watch the video, the name of the video that they all feature in is called Losers. So thinking about what you said about the connection between these 8 people, and now the fact that you know that they were on a video called Losers, do you want to go back to your conversation and adjust your views? Okay, does anyone want to comment? What's the connection between these 8 people? Apart from losing weight. I think the third guy's gone a bit far then, if that's the connection. Anything else? Yeah.
No, I think it's about things that, perceptions of what other people consider not cool.
Okay. 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 Anything else?
Probably not successful.
Can you?
Yep. Say again. Sorry.
They're not probably not successful.
They're not successful students. Okay. So the connections they're not successful students. Okay. All right. Okay. Before we go on and watch the video, I talked a little bit before about the task that you did at the beginning with the reading text and the video, and how you actually kind of get that to the students. I mean, the physical act of saying, this is what I'd like you to do at home, students. Here is the material. This is how you access it, etc., etc. Because I think that's obviously quite an important thing. I think that sort of traditional methods of email don't work, or wouldn't work in this case. Most of you have probably heard of Edmodo, or have used Edmodo, which I've kind of found. Can you but you haven't actually, if you've never heard of Edmodo, or don't know what Edmodo is. Okay, actually quite a few of you. At first glance, then, what does it look like? If you didn't know that it was called Edmodo, Facebook. It looks very much like Facebook. So, from the point of view of getting learners or getting your students to engage with this platform, you're onto a winner immediately with the fact that it looks like Facebook, and all learners, or not all, but a lot of learners will be using Facebook, apart from a few. So it looks like Facebook. It functions very much like Facebook as well, in that you can put in the chat box, you can upload images, you can upload videos, you can upload documents. The nice thing about it, and the thing that separates it from Facebook, and the thing that particularly with younger learners that I've been working with for the last 7 years, which is a big issue, is privacy, is that it's private. You create a private group, and the only way you can actually join the group is through a code and a specific URL. Okay, so you create a closed group that only the learners and you can interact with. The other nice thing about it is that you can separate. So if you have a large class of 30 students or 40 students, you can separate the students up into groups of 4 or 5 or 6, or however many you want, and give them separate tasks to do, which is another good feature. The other features that are nice are you can create assignments. So basically, this task is set up as an assignment, and once you create the assignment, you can then monitor that, and you can see which students have done it and which students haven't. The nice thing is that everything kind of works within the Edmodo platform. So the students go there, they sign in, they download or they view the video, or they download the documents within the platform itself. If there's a task, they complete the task, and they re-upload their answers to Edmodo. So there's really very little in terms of having to go off to different places in order to complete the tasks if you don't want them to. Okay. I realise that's possibly a little bit small. The assignment follows on from the end of today's class. What you've just done, what's the connection between these 8 people? Download the bullying document. There are 3 tasks. The first task, vocabulary. It says, can you see that? It says, Joanne, it's your turn to look after the vocabulary this week. Okay, so what you're doing here with this is, and I'll show you how I've done that as well, but by giving certain students certain responsibilities, it's kind of, again, I mean, I realise this is the learning technology stick and we're looking at learner autonomy. That's something that allows the students to take responsibility. They're responsible for an aspect of that week's home task, if you like. Okay. You've actually got the tasks there on the paper that I gave you, but I won't focus on it too much because I realise we're live streaming and people can't see it online. Okay, this is just so you can see what it looks like with the assignment overview, so you can see if people have turned it in or they've completed it or they haven't completed it. So you can see at the time I took this screenshot, only one person had done it. That's fine. Okay. You can give them a score, etc., etc. Okay, so you can grade it if you want to grade it. You don't have to grade it. I don't really like grading, but that's another thing, perhaps another session. Hang on. Speed session. All right. So the text that you have got, actually, that's there. So when I talked about Joanne, it's your turn to look after the vocabulary. This is what Joanne would have to do. I mean, all the students obviously would look at the vocabulary from the reading text. So you've got the warmer in class. Then you have this task, which is a reading text, and this is the vocabulary from that reading text. Okay. In order it's vocabulary that I identify as possibly unknown and relating to the topic. These are all hyperlinked to an online dictionary. But what Joanne would do is use something called Mindmeister. Again, can you put your hand up if you've never seen a site called Mindmeister before? Okay. All right, quite a few of you. Mindmeister is a very nice mind mapping tool. It's free up to a certain point. I think you get 4 mind maps or 3 mind maps for free, and then you have to start paying for them. Or you pay for a subscription. What I have done is just have one mind map for the whole class, for the whole group. So you only need one mind map. And when I say, Joanne, it's your turn to look after the vocabulary, it's Joanne who has to go into the mind map or Mindmeister and add the vocabulary there for the other students to be able to see it and view it. So he not only has a responsibility to himself, but he also has a responsibility to the rest of the class to provide them with help with vocabulary and with letters. Not so much with that specific activity, because they'll probably go off and look at it themselves, but later on at the end of the year or at certain points during the year where you might want to assess the vocabulary or do some kind of revision activity where you get them to go to the mind map and identify it and find it. If you're the student who is responsible for the bullying vocabulary, for example, and you'd shirked your responsibilities, then the rest of the class would have cause to be quite cross, I suppose. Okay. The nice thing with this is a little bit what it looks like. So you have vocabulary, you have bullying there, and you can see that there's the words or the expressions, and then there's a couple of little icons next to the arrow and the notes, and the arrows are external links. So usually it's to an online dictionary, in this case Cambridge Online Dictionary, so they can go there to find a definition. And the one next to it is a note. So the idea is that they go, they find the definitions for the vocabulary, they insert the hyperlink to the vocabulary, and then they write a note, which is a sentence using that particular expression. So that when other students come to the site, they can see where the link is, they can see an example, and it just helps them understand it much more easily. Okay. Anything else there? Again, it's closed, so you can share it. You create the mind map, and then you share it with the students in the class. Okay, and it works like that throughout the year. So you set it up, and throughout the year, each week or whenever you do it, each time you do it, a different student has responsibility for adding the vocabulary. Okay. All right. So this is the task for the video. Just let you read that. So all of this is available to the students through the Edmodo group. They download, can watch the video through it. They can access the Mindmeister, Mindmap through it, etc., etc. Okay, we're going to watch the video. I'll just warn you, it's quite a strong video in terms of the imagery and in terms of in some cases the language as well. So I hope that you're not offended by it. The reason why I've kind of set it up is largely, or why I've used this is largely because it was used as part of a topic on bullying. So it was designed to be quite strong to kind of reach the students, I guess. Okay. So thinking about obviously kind of setting up where you have in the class, you've got where I showed you the 8 pictures and what's the connection, and then the name of the video. That's what happens in class. They don't realise what the video is until they get home and watch it. Okay. Should you watch it?
Bitch.
Fire crotch.
Gay.
Cunt.
Little girl.
Idiot.
Cocksucker.
Weirdo. Fat ass.
Retard.
Ew. Pussy. Fail. Dickwad.
Freak.
Bad.
Such a loser. Losers.
Company Every Nun are fantastic. They've made some fantastic. And if any of you use a guy called Kieran Donny, I don't know if he's here. Kieran Donaghy's website, Film English, he uses quite a few videos by this company. Every Nun. If you just Google Every Nun, you can see there's lots of videos. It's quite a strong film, I think. So let's assume now that with the students, we've done the warm-up in the class with the images, they've watched the video, they've completed this task on their reflection sheet and uploaded it back onto Edmodo for you to look at before you go into class the next week. What would you do? What's the next step? What is the output? What happened in the classroom? What activities could you do? Okay, I'm aware that we haven't got a huge amount of time to get your ideas. These are some of the things that you could work on. It could simply be that you focus on vocabulary, developing the vocabulary. It's not content creation. There needs to be a language element in there. Role play, dialogue creation between a parent and a child, between a teacher and a parent. Teacher and child, written compositions, diaries, letters to parents, responding to the text, video, audio work, so actually getting students to produce their own video responses or audio responses. A fiction, sorry, it's just at the bottom, I don't know if you can see fictions, so a scene, creating some kind of play, filming a play or not filming it, it's up to you, but kind of responding by producing something. Okay. How does the different roles change? How does the role of the teacher change? How does the role of the learner change in this kind of context? In terms of the teacher, I think the role of the teacher changes with regards to planning. In that, as a teacher, you're planning for production. You're not planning for to spend lots of time on input in terms of setting up the warmer, the reading text, the control practice or whatever, and then the freer practice. That kind of goes, because in theory what happens in the classroom is you're there, you come in straight away and you kind of hit the ground running, and the students are there ready to produce. Sounds a bit odd, doesn't it? But the inputs happen outside of the classroom, so in theory they can come in and you can set up the activities and they can start working on that. In terms of input, I think outside of the classroom, and it's important. I think if you're setting this up and you use something like Edmodo and you're the teacher, and you notice that not many of the students have done it, then it's a question of going in the same way as you might do with Facebook and actually kind of putting in some comments, asking the students, are you having some problems? Is there something you don't understand? Etc. Etc. But also, I think encouraging the students to interact between themselves. So in a sense, they kind of take control of it a little bit. Once you set it up, what happens online is and dialogue between the students can happen online through Edmodo as well. Facilitation, I think if you kind of take the planning and the implementation and making sure that you're kind of promoting the ideas that you've planned for, essentially, so that you're helping them to develop their autonomy. So it's a question of kind of going in and really facilitating their production and not kind of regressing and falling back on a default of okay, well I'll just come and help you then. Let me just kind of do it in a sense. So your role is very much is very different. That there is input. You are feeding in language. In a sense, in adhering to a kind of quite an unplugged view, a way of teaching. And finally, awareness. I think if you've got 90-minute classes with students where predominantly 95% of the time is about them producing content, producing language, then you become much more aware of their abilities, but also how they work in groups and how they work with other students. So there's like an affective aspect, I think, as well to it. Okay, how does the role of the learner change? I think it's fairly obvious. You're asking them to take much more responsibility for their learning and much more autonomy for their learning. So I'm just sorting my notes. They need to kind of be a lot more self-guiding, I think, in a sense. And that doesn't mean that you desert them, that you just kind of leave them to get on with it. It's, your role as a teacher is equally important, but it's kind of, in a sense, nurturing that a little bit and nurturing their autonomy and their responsibility and helping them and guiding them to be like that. Skills, obviously, with the online aspects, they're working on their digital literacies, if you like, searching for information as well, and cooperation, having to work with each other to achieve goals, if you like, or achieve results, tasks. Okay. I don't think we've got time. What I was going to do was I was going to show you a video and some text and ask you to create your own task. But I don't think we've got a huge amount of time because I've been asked to leave 10 minutes at the end for questions. So we'll just... But I suggest having a look at a school called Quest to Learn. There's a website, I think, Quest to Learn is a school in New York, which is a game-based learning syllabus, which is very interesting. I'll just very quickly show you the video because it's really, really short, and then we'll stop.
It's a really cool school. I've never gone to a school and quite like it.
Well, we get to design games and play each other's games. So instead of just doing work all day.
Well, we have the basic classes of a school, but we gave them different names. Like math is called Code World, science is the way things work. We learn everything that all the other schools learn. We just learn it differently.
My name is Katie Salem, and I wear a couple of different hats. One.
But yeah, Google Quest to Learn. So it's a very interesting person. But this, what I was going to ask you to do was use that video and the text and think about how you would set up a flipped. What would you do if you wanted to take that video and use it in a flipped classroom setting? What would your warmer be? What would your online at-home content be? And what would you then do in class? Maybe it could be your project conference. I think the idea of game-based learning and game-based schooling is quite an interesting concept. And actually, on the website, it goes into a lot more detail about how it works. It's good. Okay, I think just last thing. This is kind of from my experience what I would suggest. Don't flip all the time. I don't think you need to be doing it every single day or every single week. I think it's a nice thing to kind of introduce throughout the year, occasionally, to kind of get students used to the idea of it and get feedback from them, so they kind of come back and they say whether it worked, what didn't work. Tell them what you're doing and why. I think that's important. There's no point in just kind of going, well, everything's at home now. And leaving it like that. You need to kind of explain the rationale, I think, for doing it, and kind of, again, get their responses and find out what they think about it. Don't worry if not all your students do the work. I think, what I showed you with Edmodo is you can see whether the students have done it or not. So when you come to plan the class, you can see, okay, well, 5 or 6 of them haven't done it, or half of them haven't done it, or a third of them. You then adjust your planning accordingly. Set up activities that allow for them to kind of catch up, if you like. Not to the extent where they think, well, I can just leave it then, because I know that I'll find out when I come into class. But I think you need to be careful. As I said, I don't think I have the answers, but at least knowledge and awareness of the situation is kind of at least half the battle, if you like. Okay. And experiment and reflect and adapt. Is the last thing, which kind of adheres back to there's no such thing as the flipped classroom. And that's it. Turn my... Okay. I know you're all desperate to get to lunch, probably, but are there any questions?